When you toast a piece of bread, it turns from soft and white to brown and stiff. This process is called the Maillard reaction. It's what makes toast delicious, but it's also exactly what's happening inside your body right now. We usually think of sugar in terms of expanding waistlines or bad dental health, but instead I want you to think of it in terms of structural damage. Sugar just doesn't contribute to weight gain, it's actively cooking your organs from the inside out. This is the scientific breakdown of how sugar accelerates your biological clock and the exact protocols I would use to reverse the damage. I'm Dr. Cal, a medical doctor with 7 years of clinical experience in the NHS. I research the science of longevity to help you live longer and healthier. Most people quit sugar because they want to lose 5 kilograms before a big holiday or an event. That's absolutely fine, but it's one of the least important reasons to do it. You should be quitting sugar to save your collagen, your mitochondria, and your neurons. For this video, I've gone through over 60 research papers on sugar metabolism, glycation, mitochondrial dysfunction, and neurodegeneration. I've linked every single one of them in a citation library in the description so you can check out the research yourself. Here's what I'm going to walk you through. I call these the 4 horsemen of sugary aging. Number 1, structural aging. How sugar literally stiffens your arteries and your skin. Number 2, mitochondrial dysfunction, the survival switch that traps you in a fat storage mode. Number 3, hepatic stress, why your liver is the first organ to take the damage of excess sugar. And number 4, cognitive decline, the link between sugar and Alzheimer's disease that's now typically referred to as type 3 diabetes. But then I'll give you the 3-step protocol on how I would reverse the damage. Now, before we get into the mechanisms, it's important to understand what we're actually talking about when we discuss sugar metabolism. When most people talk about sugar, they're usually lumping together all simple carbohydrates. Table sugar, honey, fruit juice, the carbs in bread, but metabolically there are critical differences between them. Glucose is the body's primary fuel. Your brain runs on it, your muscles burn it. Every cell in your body can handle glucose. Fructose, on the other hand, is greatly different. Fructose is metabolized almost exclusively by the liver, and it triggers a completely different set of metabolic pathways originally designed to help our ancestors survive periods of food scarcity. In simple terms, glucose is a fuel, fructose is a chemical signal. And in the modern food environment, where fructose is everywhere and constant, that signal never turns off. Understanding that helps you make sense of why certain foods cause more harm than others. Let's start with the most visible sign of aging, the wrinkles on your face. We spend an absolute fortune on external fixes, retinols, expensive cream, collagen supplements, but we are completely ignoring the internal process that essentially melts our collagen and skin scaffolding. This brings us back to the toast. The browning of bread happens because of a chemical process called the Maillard reaction. Sugar reacts with protein under heat. In your body, the heat comes from your internal temperature of 37 degrees Celsius. So it happens a lot slower than in a toaster, but it's happening 24 hours a day, every single day. When sugar molecules, specifically glucose and fructose, float continuously around in your blood, they bump into proteins and fats. They stick to them. It's chaotic, messy, and it's a process called glycation. Once they get stuck, they end up forming permanent knots called advanced glycogen end products. The acronym is appropriately named AGES. Think of it like this. Sugar in your bloodstream is sticky. When it bumps into proteins that make up your tissues, your skin, your arteries, and your organs, it glues itself on. Over time, that temporary stickiness becomes a permanent weld. AGEs are these welded complexes. And once they form, they act like superglue in a complex machine. They stick up the gears, they bind to proteins that are supposed to be flexible, making them stiff and brittle. A comprehensive review by Gill and colleagues published in the Journal of Biomolecules in 2019 looked at the impact of dietary AGEs on skin. They found a direct linear relationship. High AGE levels equals less elastic skin and deeper wrinkles. Essentially, sugar destroys the spring in your skin. But here's the catch, and this is why, as a doctor, I worry. It's not just your skin where this is happening, it's your entire cardiovascular system. Your arteries are elastic tubes. They aren't supposed to be rigid. They need to stretch and recoil every single time your heart beats, which is around 100,000 times a day. But research shows that the same cooking reaction we spoke about in your skin is happening in your arterial walls too. The sugar permanently stiffens the collagen in your main arteries. The vessels become rigid and they can't expand properly when your heart pumps. So what happens? Your blood pressure increases, your heart has to pump harder to force blood through the stiff pipes, and over time the heart muscle thickens and eventually fails. Now, let's go deeper into the cell itself. There is a specific switch in your cells that fructose triggers. It's an evolutionary masterpiece designed to help our ancestors survive the cold, hard winters. But today, it is absolutely backfiring on us. We tend to think of all calories as fuel. We think a calorie of glucose is the same thing as a calorie of fructose. That's wrong. Glucose is fuel. It's the gold standard for energy. Fructose is different. Fructose is a chemical signal. And in the words of Jon Snow, that signal is, winter is coming. Food will be scarce, you'll need to store fat immediately and slow down. That's what fructose tells our body. But how does a simple sugar molecule send such an important command? It happens through a mechanism identified by Dr. Richard Johnson at the University of Colorado. When your liver cells handle fructose, they phosphorylate it rapidly using an enzyme called fructokinase. This process consumes ATP, which is your cellular currency, at an extraordinarily high rate. This drains the cell battery, ATP levels crash, and when the battery dies, the cells go into panic mode. This panic generates a waste product called uric acid. We usually link uric acid to gout, but inside the cell, uric acid acts like throwing sand into an engine. It causes oxidative stress, specifically in the mitochondria, which are your cellular power plants. In simple terms, fructose metabolism creates a toxic byproduct that damages the very machinery you need to burn fat. By damaging the mitochondria, the body forces the cell to stop burning fat and start storing it. It assumes you're about to starve, so it hoards every calorie. A landmark review in Cancer and Metabolism showed that this forces the cell into an emergency energy mode known as the Warburg effect. Instead of burning energy efficiently with oxygen in the mitochondria, your cells switch to the primitive, wasteful method called glycolysis, the same energy pathway cancer cells use. In simple terms, your cells start acting like they're in survival mode, constantly. But the result of all this? Your body wants to move less. It wants you to sit on the couch and it lowers your metabolism. You're being biologically programmed to save energy because your mitochondria have been hijacked by a survival signal that in the modern world never turns off. This leads us to the third horseman, the liver. But here's what most people get wrong about gaining weight. We assume that you have to be overweight to be unhealthy. But let me tell you, you can have a normal BMI and still be struggling internally from a metabolic perspective. This actually describes nearly 40% of the normal weight population. It's the skinny fat phenomenon and it starts in the liver. Here's why. Almost every cell in your body helps handle the glucose load. Muscle, brain, heart, they all soak up glucose. But fructose is different. The liver has to deal with it all by itself. When you have a sugary drink, a fruit smoothie, or eat a processed snack, a tidal wave of fructose hits the liver all at once. Because the power plants, the mitochondria, are shut down, just as we discussed earlier, the liver can't burn this load for energy. So it only has one option left: de novo lipogenesis. But that's not a Harry Potter spell. In technical terms, excess fructose is converted into acetyl coenzyme A, which is then assembled into palmitic acid and other fatty acids through a multi-enzyme pathway. These fatty acids are packaged into triglycerides and are either stored in the liver or exported as very low density lipoprotein particles around the body. In simple terms, it turns that sugar directly into liver fat. This creates non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, or NAFLD. Historically, fatty liver was only seen in alcoholics, but now we are seeing it even in children. Why does this matter? Well, because the liver is the control center. When it fills with fat, it stops listening to insulin. Researchers show that just 7 days of high fructose intake is enough to make the liver cells resistant to insulin. This leads to fat collecting around your organs, and that's called visceral fat. This sets the stage for type 2 diabetes years before it shows up on a blood test. You might not notice a difference on the scale yet, but your body is struggling internally. Finally, we need to talk about your brain. We used to think the brain didn't need insulin to absorb glucose. We were taught in medical school that it just soaked it up like a sponge. We were wrong. The link between insulin dysfunction and brain decline is now so strong that many researchers have started referring to Alzheimer's as type 3 diabetes. Just recently, in 2024, a study by Tong and colleagues looked at the brains of older adults and traced how insulin signals were working. What they found was crazy. Messed up insulin signals in the prefrontal cortex, which is the area responsible for your personality and decision making, were directly associated with cognitive decline. When your brain stops responding to the insulin, the neurons starve. They lose the ability to fuel themselves efficiently. But there's another, even more concerning villain here: methylglyoxal. When your brain is continuously flooded with sugar and forced to burn it inefficiently through glycolysis, it produces a toxic byproduct called methylglyoxal. This is a potent precursor to those AGEs we talked about earlier. It's far more reactive than glucose itself, up to 20,000 times more reactive. A review by Angeloni found that this byproduct is strictly correlated with the protein damage and neurofibrillary tangles associated with Alzheimer's brains. You're essentially caramelizing your neural network. This explains why people with type 2 diabetes have up to a 65% increase in developing Alzheimer's. This is why dealing with this now, in your 30s, 40s, or 50s, is arguably the single most effective thing you can do to protect your mind as you age. Once the neurons are gone, they don't come back. As of today, prevention is the only cure we have. Okay, so we've covered the bad news. The 4 horsemen are real, but we can fight back. And you don't have to live on a zero-carb diet for the rest of your life to do so. It's all about building a resilient system. Here is the 3-step protocol that I would use to reverse this damage and restore metabolic flexibility. Step 1, the glyoxylase defense. Your body is clever. It has a natural clearing crew for those toxic byproducts we just talked about. It's called the glyoxylase system. Its only job is to detoxify methylglyoxal and other harmful sugar metabolites. You want to boost this clearing crew as much as possible. But how do we do that? Sulfonaphanes. This is a master regulator of your body's antioxidant response. This upregulates the expression of glyoxylase 1 and dozens of other protective enzymes. In simple terms, it turns on the master antioxidant switch in your DNA, which boosts your body's clearing system. Polyphenols like curcumin found in turmeric and resveratrol also do this. Step 2, the metabolic sponge. Walking. We know that your muscles soak up a huge amount of glucose after a meal, but timing exercise is important from a metabolic perspective. A 2022 meta-analysis confirmed that even light-intensity walking reduces glucose and insulin levels significantly if done soon after eating. A 10-minute walk immediately after a meal is far more effective than a 45-minute walk 4 hours later. Why? Because you're clearing the glucose from your blood before it peaks. You're clearing it before it's had a chance to bind to your collagen and form AGEs. You're sort of acting as your own insulin. Step 3, the order of operations. When you eat carbohydrates, never eat them naked. The rate at which sugar enters your bloodstream determines how much damage it does. We want to flatten that curve. Change the order of your fork. Research by Dr. Louise Aron at Cornell showed the power of food sequencing. Number 1, vegetables or fiber first. This creates a viscous mesh inside your small intestine which physically slows absorption. Number 2, proteins and fats. These trigger satiety hormones like GLP-1 and slow gastric emptying, literally making your stomach empty more slowly into your intestine so you feel more full. Then starches and sugars last. This simple change, without altering what you eat, but just the order can flatten your glucose spike by up to 73%. It turns a toxic tsunami into a manageable stream. It is not about depriving yourself of the sweet sensation of a pizza every now and then. It's about understanding that there are tangible, harmful biochemical processes that occur because of the food we eat. Now, if you want to know some of the other powerful longevity interventions that you can make habits out of, I made a video that discusses 7 of the most important and evidence-based. I'll link it somewhere up here. If you've got questions or there's a topic you want me to cover, drop it in the comments below. As always, I've compiled all studies referenced in this video into a citation library. It's free and you can find the link in the description below. Until next time, look after yourselves.